Hi guys, Mark here. I hope you are well. In today's tutorial, we're going to be making a paracord blackjack. This can be a decorative piece or a self-defense weapon. So naturally, follow the local laws in regards to carrying and using these items. The project that we're going to cover today is quite decorative and not the easiest to make. Still, I'm going to do my very best to show you every single technique that I use to make these, so with enough time, effort, and patience, you're going to be able to do it. The blackjack itself is a two-belly version, meaning that we're going to plait our cord 2 times to get the final thickness. The head is decorated using grafting. A couple of decorative knots here are doubled up Turk's head knots. So with that said, let's get into the tutorial. For the cord of the blackjack, I'm going to be using wire rope, 10 inches long and 1/4 inch in diameter. Various cord lengths of Paracord 550 are going to be used throughout the tutorial. I'm going to address specific cord lengths before I'm going to execute a technique. Electrical tape is going to be used throughout the tutorial as well. It's going to be used to stiffen up the blackjack, thicken it up, and for various holding tasks. A lacing needle and a rubber band are going to help us tie our Turk's head knots. Scissors and a lighter are going to help us cut and melt our cords. We begin by covering our cord with electrical tape. Like this. I'm now going to plait over the cord. Usually I place my cord into a vise in order to hold it in place. I'm going to prepare 4 pieces of gutted paracord, each 3.5 feet long. I'm going to find the middle points in my 4 cords and cross them like this. So I have 4 strands on the right, 4 strands on the left. I take my top left strand, pass behind, in between the 4 strands on the right, back to the bottom on the left. Then the top right strand passes behind, in between the 4 strands on the left, back to the bottom on the right. Again, top left strand passes behind, in between the 4 strands on the right, back to the bottom on the left. Top right strand passes behind, in between the 4 strands on the left, back to the bottom on the right. Again, top left, top right. Top left, top right. Tighten up by pulling on all of your strands and continue the same way. Top left strand, top right, top left, top right, top left, top right, top left, top right, and tighten up. Continue plating until you cover the entire cord. I keep plaiting until the very last strand in my plait clears the end of the cord. Then I secure the very end of my plait using a bit of tape. Like this. A bit of tape is not enough to securely finish the end of your plaiting. This is why I usually use an inner strand of paracord to do some binding over the piece of tape. Here you can do a series of constrictor knots, a whipping, some French hitching, whatever you want to use. So first I'm going to show you a series of constrictor knots. To make things easier to see, here is a red piece of thread. I tie my first constrictor knot by forming an X, passing on the left of the standing end, over it, under the X. Tighten up as firmly as you can. Then do your next constrictor knot exactly the same way. So an X, come around, under the X, tighten up. And again, and again, and so on. You can do as many as you like. The more you do, the more secure the ending is going to be. So once you're happy with the number of constrictor knots, trim the two ends, melt them a bit, and you're ready for the next step. The second way for finishing our plaiting here is going to be a sailor's whipping. Again, I'm using a red piece of thread to make things easier to see. I've also cut and melted the ends, again to make things easier to see. We take one end of our thread and place it like this. Then we start wrapping around our tape. We do our wraparounds firmly, one next to the other. After doing a bunch of wraps, we take this short end and we fold it back like this. We place our other end, so the long end next to it, like this. Then we use our standing end here to wrap around this end. Traveling towards the right, we continue wrapping around. So basically using a bite to wrap around here, so around the end. So we keep doing this until we cover about the remaining half of our tape. So let's say something like this. Take this end, pull on it a bit, and we have both of our ends here at the center. Now really firmly lock them in, pulling on each of your ends. Like this. You can now trim and melt the two ends, or you can tie them together using a reef knot. And again, cut and melt the two ends. The next step here is optional. I'm going to cover the entire cord again using my tape. This way I bulk up the cord a bit more. Like this. We continue by plaiting over the cord for a second and final time. We prepare 6 cords of gutted paracord. Each strand is 4 feet long. Cross your strands over the cord like this. So we have 6 ends on the left, 6 on the right. We're going to continue with the 12-stranded herringbone plait. Top left strand passes behind, in between the strands on the right, back to the bottom on the left. Top right strand passes behind, in between the strands on the left, back to the bottom on the right. Top left strand passes behind, in between the strands on the right, back to the bottom on the left. Top right strand passes behind, in between the strands on the left, back to the bottom on the right. Top left, top right. continue the same way. Top left strand, top right strand, top left, top right, top left, top right. Once in a while, tighten up by pulling on all of your strands. Then continue the same way. Top left, top right. After plaiting over the cord, we are again going to secure the ends, first with a bit of tape, then bind over the end of your plating using either a series of constrictor knots or perhaps the sealer's whipping. Continue by finally adding yet another layer of tape just to even everything out. Roll your blackjack to even out your plaiting. You can see that we get a really nice plait going after we roll it. We now covered the head of our blackjack using a technique called grafting. To do this, I'm going to be using 12 strands of gutted paracord. 11 strands are a foot long each. The 12th strand is 4 feet long, and it is used to wrap around and around, creating row after row of our grafting. First, we need to set up a mesh-like pattern. We take our strands and we line them up like this. The other 6 are woven into the original 6. The 4-foot long strand is woven exactly the same way, with one end being as long as the others, and the other end being used to wrap around when we set up our grafting. So for now, you bring your strands together a bit, and you place this setup on the head of your blackjack. You can also start your grafting like this. I have 2 rubber bands over the head of my blackjack. I'm going to attach half of my cords, so 6, under the rubber bands like this. So like this over the top, and under again on the other side. So these are 2, I need 4 more. And 2 more. So like this, I have 6 strands going from one side to the other. I'm now going to weave the other 6 strands going alongside here, through my strands, and back here to the bottom. So I start with my first strand, place it under like this, under here, then through my 6 strands, so over under, over under, over under, and down on the other side. I take the next strand and repeat. So parallel to the previous strand, doing the opposite. So I start over here, where the cord is going under. So over under, over under, over under, so parallel to the previous strand, doing the opposite. And under the rubber bands on the other side. Then simply continue with the next strand. Like this. You really need to make sure that you have your strands lined up correctly. So one next to the other, then continue over under, over under, over under, and under the rubber bands on the other side. Now this really takes quite a bit of attention to detail, so do it slowly and make sure your strands are lined up. So one next to the other, and each strand goes the opposite to the one next to it. So opposite to this strand, under over, under over, under over, and under the rubber bands on the other side. So only if you're going to do this correctly, you're going to get a nice looking result. The next strand, the opposite to the one next to it. So under over, under over, under over, and under the rubber bands. Now my final long strand, I'm going to place it parallel to this strand. One end is the same length as the other ones. I travel parallel to the strand next to it. So under over, under over, under over, and I'm going to be using this end to start my grafting. So the setup now is clear. We're going to start wrapping around and around, weaving through our ends. For now, line them up, making sure that we have one next to the other without any crossing. Now our grafting. For the grafting, we are going to weave our strand through our strands in a spiral until we reach a sufficient length. So this is a simple over one, under one sequence. You can always check if you're doing this correctly by taking a look at the strand next to your working strand. You should be doing the opposite all the time. Keep doing this until you get a sufficient length for your wrap. Now one thing that you can do is to bring your strands closer a bit by pulling on your strands, which is going to push your strand up. So if I want to push this one up, I'm going to pull on this one. In any case, just keep grafting around and around. After doing quite a bit of grafting, we're going to tighten it up from this to this. We start with the wrapping cord, removing quite a bit of slack. Then tighten up your other cords, making sure that the top stays nice and closed. So something like this. So pull on your other strands, and when you want to get these together, remember that you can pull on your strands to push your cords up. After tightening up my grafting, I'm going to tie a constrictor knot using my long end to hold the other ends in place. So an X shape, I come around, passing under the X, and tightening up as firmly as I can. Then I'm going to cut this strand here, melt it, tape it up, and do some binding over my tape if I want to. Then trim any excess ends. Like this. Finally, we're going to cover up these two sections here using a couple of double top Turk's head knots. To do this, we need a rubber band, 8 feet of paracord, and a lacing needle. To make things easier to see, I'm using cord of the red color. Place one end under the rubber band. Wrap around, like this, passing over the standing end. Come around, over this strand here, then the opposite to this cord, under over. Wrap around, double up the standing end, going under over, then travel the opposite to this strand, so over, under over. This doubles up this strand here on the right. We now split our double top strands, traveling in between them and doing the opposite. So here we go over, under over. Here, again, we split our two strands, going under, over, under, over. We are going to double up the standing hand one more time. So under, over, under, over. Then we travel the opposite to this strand. So over, under, over, under, over. Again, doubling up this strand here on the right. We now split our doubled up strands. So over, under, over, under, and over. And again here, under, over, under, over, under, and over. Place your working hand alongside the standing hand, going under one. This ties a 7-part 6-bite Turk's head. We now double up our knot. As you can see, I loosened up my knot a little bit, making the doubling up process a bit easier. So to loosen up your knot, you simply work in a bit of your working hand into the knot, going through the knot and leaving some slack behind. You go through the entire knot until you reach the standing hand. Do this several times so that you get a nice and loose knot. To double up your knot, all we are going to do is follow the standing hand. So here we are already traveling under one. We continue over, under, over, under, over. Like this. Then, from right to left, we again follow our standing hand. When you reach the standing hand, you go under here, so under 2 in this case, which doubles up your knot. To make the end a bit easier to finish up, I'm going to bring it under the entire knot to the right. Later on, I can trim the 2 ends on the sides. Move your knot over the section that you want to cover. Tighten it up, starting at the standing hand, going through the entire knot. Like this. Repeat the tightening process a couple of times, then we're going to finish up. We tied the seam knot again here at the bottom. We slide it over, and when tightening up, we make sure that we close it up here at the bottom. You really need to tighten up your knots very firmly to prevent them from slipping off of your blackjack. So, after quite a few passes of tightening, I'm going to trim the ends. Then roll my two knots. After rolling the two knots, I pushed the two ends of my knot under the knot to hide them out of sight. Next, I'm going to heat treat the two knots to shrink them up a bit, making them less prone to slipping off of the blackjack. I do this with a lighter, being careful not to melt any cords. So guys, that's our project. An awesome looking Paracord blackjack. Now if you got to this point, doing all of the techniques, I must congratulate you. It takes quite a bit of patience, skill, and practice to do this in a nice way. Now don't use it to hurt people, use it to demonstrate your skills. Thank you very much for joining me today. Consider supporting the site on Patreon, and I'll see you next time.